had just finished working on a movie called Long Legs. I came off a run with Sympathy for the Devil and Dream Scenario. And I wanted to make sure that whatever I did next would be special in some way and have an original feeling to it. I didn't want to do anything that was standard. I wanted to keep it in the vein of Sympathy or Dream Scenario or Long Legs. So it took a while trying to be selective to find something that as soon as I read it, I was like, well, where is this going? I was very swept up in it, in the script, because it surprised me. It was weird. I mean, just to put it bluntly, it was unlike anything I'd read. It felt like an Albert Camus, the stranger kind of existential storyline. It's just a script about existence, but it's called The Surfer.
You would think that would make it pretty obvious as to what it's about. And there's definitely elements of surfing involved in the movie, but it's more of a psychological challenge type movie. But the world that we're in is pretty much the majority, if not all of the movie, is shot on location in this beach, this beautiful beach. And the main character, played by Nick, there's this kind of barrier between what he wants in his life and where he's at in his life. And so everything exists between the land and the sea. And his desire to get out into the ocean is the thing that's preventing him to get where he wants to in his life. Sounds a little convoluted, but it's actually kind of interesting psychologically in the way that we play it in the movie. And so I think that's kind of the parameters with which we're working with.
It's really about a man trying to get his surfboard back, but it's not. There's so much more going on underneath it. The board becomes symbolic for something else, I think. Not unlike Pig, where yes, the pig was kidnapped, but at the same time, or pignapped, or whatever you want to call it, but at the same time, there was a lot more going on as to why he needed his pet back, and there's a lot more going on as to why the surfer needs his board back.
It's an unfeebled, debilitated, weak man who returns to his hometown where he grew up after 30, 40 years in the States, to only find that his hometown has been completely run over by a group of locals called themselves the Bay Boys, run by myself and Julian. He's put into a world where suddenly savagery is the only way to survive. He is stripped back to the bare basics and he loses everything to suffer basically before he can surf. He looks for a way out, he finds a way out, he ends up finding his own moment of masculinity and rising to a cause, but it all ends up in a really intensely terrifying, unnerving, gritty and just thrilling conclusion that you'll have to wait to see.
Well, I wanted to get back to my own voice. I experiment a lot with the sound of my voice for different characters that I've played, most recently in Long Legs and Dream Scenario, and even in Sympathy for the Devil. It was all very different sounds to the characters. But I wanted to return to my own cadence, my own tonality as so-called Nick Cage, which is why I really stuck to the California accent. I'm playing an Australian. The character, the surfer, is born here, and he's coming back to Australia, to his childhood neighborhood and hopefully his childhood home.
So Scally's, I'd say, probably the antagonist of the picture. It depends on which way you want to look at the movie. I kind of look at it mostly as a psychological thriller type thing, and Scally is just on the surface the kind of head guy of this group of people that kind of own and belong at this beach, and he's a bit of a psychological manipulator. He's quite charismatic and kind of powerful in regards to the way that he kind of speaks and the way with which he kind of rules. And for Nick's character, he represents the kind of wall between where Nick is in his life right now, which is at this real turning point and maybe very psychologically challenging and kind of almost tragic, to where he wants to be, which he feels like is the pinnacle of where he can get to kind of make everything right with his life. And my character represents the wall between him being able to do that successfully.
When I read the script, that's the other reason why I wanted to make the movie. I thought the Scally character was marvelous. And I think Julian played it pitch perfect.
I studied a lot of just interesting characters in life, you know what I mean? Particularly leaders who, whether it was cult leaders or political leaders, and was trying to kind of come up with what was like a concrete theme that matched through all of them. I'm not sure I actually got to what that was, but I definitely, you know, you do recognize the charismatic, the energetic, the ability to deliver prophetizing verbiage, you know what I mean? And I think we're all looking for leaders, you know, and it can be quite an easy thing to do, but to do it really well is probably not that easy. I wanted him to be easy to follow without having to be too much. Just really kind of simply being who he is.
So Pitbull is he's the general of the Bay Boys, and then you've got the captain, which is Scally. So I think Scally and him have been friends for a long time, and they're kind of the original two. And I feel like his relationship with Scally is more like when you were 5 years old and your mate says, "Yeah, my dad's Batman," and then you know you go, "Yeah, I saw it," you know, and you just kind of go along with it. I think he kind of knows it's all a little bit scaly, but he's just taking it to 100% each time, 150, because he's enjoying it. But he's a wild dude. He's a educated man who was a bank manager, but he's also this absolute animal when they're by the beach. And you know, basically he just tortures the surfer for most of the film.
And it gets fairly intense because the Bay Boys, the surf gang, if you will, are putting the surfer through a series of crises where he's starving, where he's getting attacked, where he's being robbed, things like his watch, his phone. It's kind of like they're trying to, Julian's character, Scally, and his crew, the Bay Boys, are trying to break the surfer down. And the reason for that is it's a initiation of sorts.
Working with Nick, I mean, it's as surreal as you think it would be, you know, but it hasn't quite hit me yet. That's the weird thing. It's like, you know, everything I've done with him, he's been a super warm, open guy. We shot some crazy stuff where I had this flaming tiki torch and I had about, you know, 8-10 extras running around with me and chasing him through the trees, and then he was wrapped around a snake in the bush, and we got to watch both sides, my POV, his side, and then we kind of played with that. And just watching the way he works, he's a consummate professional. He's exactly who you think he is at the core of him, but, you know, I've just noticed in the last couple of weeks starting to warm up a lot more in the sense of it, and I'm watching him have a lot more fun. So it's been a dream. I mean, how do you know, we all grew up watching those films. We all grew up watching him in those roles, and then suddenly you're here and you're standing half a foot away from his face and you're going, "Oh, Nick Cage, what's up?"
To me, the movie is about loneliness, and it's also cautionary tale about capitalism or winning or having to buy things. And how that can backfire you. It's if you make that your priority, it's like wrong targets. Surfer has a genuine reason for wanting to get that house because he's trying to get back to it's like his rosebud, the board and the memories with his father. He wants to give that kind of experience to his son. It's quite tragic if you think about it. But ultimately, he just wants that connection, you know, and I think on some level he likes Scally. I mean, he wants to go surfing with Scally. This would have been great because Scally is offering the surfer a brotherhood, another family, but he has to get through the tests to be welcomed. Of course, Scally's going about it in a way that's all wrong and it's nightmarish, but ultimately, it's about human connection and not being lonely, not being isolated. This isn't a revenge thriller. There's no, "Oh, let's go beat up the gang and get back and get the board." You know, it's not that at all. This is something a lot more existential and in my view, poetic. It's a story of a human experience about specifically loneliness and wrong targets.
It's an interesting thing that this movie's come along at this point in time. I think after the last few years, everybody has had a challenging time in one way or another. And this movie, in its own way, addresses that, even though it's not the issue that we all dealt with, or issues that we've all dealt with. It still is about the psychological challenge of how do you kind of come to terms with things on your own, in and on your own terms. And I think that that's what kind of makes it a really kind of relevant movie for this period of time.
We've all known these types of people at different points, especially if you're in the water. But I think WA brings a very remote, tribalistic feel to it, which goes hand in hand with the script. And then you've got Yalling up here, which is basically on paper when you read the script, it's the exact location. You know, it's amazing to have one location to shoot in. We're not traveling 4 or 5 hours here and getting up there. It's just the one location we're shooting in, and we've got a couple pieces. But I mean, I've never been here. Most people from the East Coast never venture here because it's cheaper to go to Bali or Thailand. And you know, there's nowhere else in the world I've seen like this, where it's kind of this red earthy kind of meets the desert, but it's also this phenomenal landscape. And I'll tell you right now, I have been terrified of sharks the entire time being here. That is the only thing in the back of my mind. I'm aware they're there, so I'm a little bit more aware they're there when we're out here and you see one ping on a buoy, you know, 2 Ks up that way, and it'll be some big, huge great white, and you'll go, okay, yeah, maybe we should just not go for a solo wave at that point. But yeah, I mean, where else would you want to be to do something like this with Nick Cage? You know, it's pretty amazing.
I think there are things that I'm doing in this movie that I've never done before. I mean, there are firsts. We did a shot the other day that Lorcan and Radek had designed, where I was under, you might as well call it an aquarium, and they filled it with water and they put lights on it, and I was underneath it, and they were shooting this way and they were also shooting that way to get as if it were my point of view looking at the Bay Boys. But that was, I've never done anything like that before. Everything that has happened is as if it was conjured up by Lorcan to match the screenplay beautifully. Down to the beach itself, to the way the sanctuary hut looks, to the cast. I mean, I told Julian, this is exactly how I saw Scally. I mean, the way you're playing it is perfect. And that goes with it for everybody. You know, and everyone's cares. You know, everyone really is doing their best. Everyone's bringing their best to this project and digging deep and you know, trying to make it full of genuine emotion, and that they've been thinking through their characters perfectly, I think.
Fuck!